I'm trying to work it out. Hi, if you're just joining me, I'm going to be talking about some amazing things. So if you have your chart, or if you know how to get your chart really quick, pull it up, get it up there, because we're going to talk about Jupiter moving through the houses and why. Obviously, Jupiter's not moving through all your houses right now. Jupiter's going to be moving through one or maybe two of your houses, wherever your Aquarius house is. We all have Aquarius in our chart. Hi, if you're just joining me, I'm so excited to talk about Jupiter in Aquarius. I have been meaning or wanting to make this video for quite some time since Jupiter moved into Aquarius, which was last month. However, I was doing some Jupiter and Aquarius things and couldn't get to it. So here we go. I'm going to be talking about Jupiter in Aquarius in general, the transits it's making, and we're going to go through each one of the houses. So like I said, if you can pull up your chart and look at it to get an idea of where your Aquarius house is, if you have any planets there, or if you're like me, you have a lot of planets in the opposite house, or the trining houses, which would be any of the air signs. Yeah, oh, so are you, well, you could either be a Leo rising or Virgo rising. So if you're a Leo rising, then it's going to be opposing that wherever your Leo stuff is, okay? So let me stay focused, 'cause I'm like, okay, so this is affecting all of us, Jupiter and Aquarius, collectively and individually. And if you have more planets in Aquarius, then of course you're going to be experiencing that. If you're having what I call your Jupiter return, which if you have Jupiter in Aquarius in your birth chart, you're having your Jupiter return, which is a very expansive time. If you are born, like my son was born in 2009, which was the last time that Jupiter was in Aquarius. So he's going to be going through his massive growth spurt, which I already feel happening. So Jupiter can literally mean growth through gaining weight, growing taller. So obviously once we kind of physically get to a point where we're not going to be growing taller, the growth starts happening internally and our internal experience. And of course that happens anytime that Jupiter is coming as a return to where your Jupiter was. But also, if you just have your sun in Aquarius or you have some planets in Aquarius, then you're going to be having an expansion to those planets, those placements, okay? And like I said, I think that this year, out of all of the placements, it's going to be affecting most if you have a lot of Aquarius placements, but also if you have any of the fixed signs. So if you're Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, or Leo, that's going to be, and those are the fixed signs. And so Jupiter in a fixed sign is not going to stop until the expansion happens. At the same time, fixed signs are very stubborn. And so a lot of that is getting shaken up with Uranus. I'm not going to talk a lot about Uranus in this video, but I am going to mention it because the first transit that we have in January, we had a huge one in December, which was the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. But now in January, the first big transit that Jupiter freshly in Aquarius is having is a square to Uranus in Taurus. A square in astrology is a challenge. It asks us to meet that challenge and to grow, and it's up to us whether we choose to take on that mission or not. So I want to talk a little bit about just Jupiter in general, and I did mention the last time that Jupiter was in Aquarius was 2009. So before that, it's about every 12 and a half to 13 year transit. So going back every 12 to 13 years, that's when the lust, I don't have the dates down here, but you can do that and look on your own where your Jupiter is and see if it's making any aspects to this Jupiter. So it's either trining, squaring, sextiling. Look at that, because that's going to give you information about either where you're going to be asked to grow or where it's going to create ease for you to just naturally step into the growth. So Jupiter has to do with our growth, our improvement, it can be our literal growth spurt that kids undergo around 12 and a half to 13, right? And it also has to do with our expansion, our understanding of things, our like literal mental growth, and ways of making breakthroughs or expanding the mind, expanding. It is ruled by Sagittarius. So if you think about Sagittarius, and Sagittarius being about exploration and growth and opportunity and kind of like seeing the bigger picture, then Jupiter rules that. And so it's a lot about those things. Jupiter is the ruler of the sky. And so therefore it's all things that kind of come down and land in a way that shifts and opens us up to new perspectives. It is a benevolent planet. It is the most expansive. It is the largest planet in our solar system. And so therefore it has power. When you look at Jupiter making transits to other planets, it's going to be the one that uplifts it. And so even though with Saturn can be kind of harsh and cold and making us create form and discipline, Jupiter is flavoring that form and discipline. And so therefore making it a bit easier for us to embody that form, that discipline. So even though, you know, I'm just going to mention this for a minute, the Saturn Jupiter, because it's so rare for them to be together in the same sign. And one of the things about that is that Jupiter tends to be so expansive and so open that when Saturn's there, we're kind of like, but I can't move forward on these things yet. I can't do the things. And Saturn creates those restrictions for us so that we can embody them first. And so even though we literally cannot move forward in some of the ways that we want to move forward at this time, we're creating the inner discipline and the inner know-how in order to, once Jupiter starts moving away from Saturn, which it's already doing. Like Jupiter is flying through Aquarius. And so as it's moving away from Saturn, that's when we see the freedom, the ease, the ability to move it forward. So that's a good thing looking at our collective. One of the things that's most important about that is making sure in January, because for January, they're still somewhat together and we have that square to Uranus for January, that we make sure we got it. We make sure we've embodied it. We make sure that we have that discipline that we need so that it's not all talk, so that it's not all ideas. Because Jupiter in Aquarius, I'm going to talk about Aquarius a little bit more in a minute, can have to do with big picture thinking, but it can be a lot of ideas without a lot of maintenance, consistency, forward movement. So Saturn being there in the early beginning degrees of Aquarius assists us in creating that form and that discipline around our thoughts and our desires and our ideas. Okay, so Jupiter has to do with all of those things, our understanding, our ability to expand and to grow and to make those big leaps in our life, right? And so when it's in Aquarius has to do with humanitarianism, it has to do with humans, it has to do with also animals. They're animal lovers. They tend to be large groups, the internet, big tech. And this is something that, you know, is definitely up right now, is the expansion of big tech and what some people I think is hilarious are calling socialist media. Because, you know, this idea that Jupiter in Aquarius has to do with our expansion in freedom, our expansion in equality, and having access to the things we need access to. Sometimes though it can expand those systems, like, because Aquarius has to do with the larger community. So if enough humans come together and create a system, create big tech, create something that gets a little bit out of hand, that has power when Jupiter is in Aquarius, because it's expanding on that. So we do have to be aware and conscientious of what we're choosing to create and what we're choosing to be a part of. And this is huge because as this year progresses, and we have also, you can watch my video on Saturn in Aquarius where I talk a lot about this and free speech and the internet, and I'm not going to say something else, but that is a 5. But, you know, this is the year of a 5, and so it makes sense that we're having to be confronted with deciding what we want to be a part of, what we decide to be in insane belief with. And our beliefs are really up because both Saturn and Jupiter are in Aquarius in 2021. And so our beliefs, our ideas, our forward thinking is so vital right now. And the way that we're thinking about the future, the way that we're thinking about what we want, what we're becoming, it's very important to kind of create our own envisioning of what we want to see and what we want to become together and individually, because ultimately there are so many humans that aren't using that power of visualizing, that power of seeing what we want to see come to fruition. Instead, many of us are unfortunately focusing on the things that aren't working, whatever the media is telling us to focus on, and all of that stuff. So Aquarius is revolutionary. And one of the things that we have to be mindful of, and especially in January, is because it is so revolutionary and sometimes it is so big picture and wanting shifts and wanting equality right now, that with Uranus and Taurus making that square in January 17th is when it's exact, is that we need to be aware and conscientious of not jumping on any thought process bandwagons. And so really slowing things down, especially in January. I see so much of people jumping to so many conclusions, so many, and especially on socialist media. And so one of the best things that we can do is, take a little break, actually communicate with each other through a phone call or, going for a walk with someone. It's very important to, especially as we're getting more and more isolated, and this is some of the age of Aquarius too, is that we're moving into this time period where we don't need need is such an interesting word. We don't feel as though maybe we necessarily need each other as much as we really do. And with the age of Aquarius, there can be more of a isolation and separation and a kind of a plugging into a different type of intelligence. And we need to be very aware of our humanness at this time. And this is one thing where Jupiter in Aquarius is, even though it is kind of an intelligence and group think and that kind of thing, there's also this lone wolf energy to Aquarius that is breaking free of that and breaking free of any restrictions that keep us stuck to ideas or beliefs that aren't in humans' highest good, aren't in sentient beings' highest good, right? So overall, Aquarius, Jupiter in Aquarius has to do with awakenings and expansion, progressiveness, universal desires for the human family, social skills, teaching, learning, mentoring, because remember, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and this is creating a sextile to Sagittarius. So also if you have Sagittarius placements, this is a good year for you to move forward on your teaching, growing, expansion as well, breaking free from old ideas that aren't serving the human family and getting in more alignment to what is. Having a huge, especially with Uranus making that square, huge awakenings and sudden shifts to old beliefs or tradition. And this is Aquarian. Now, if we think about Uranus in Taurus, Uranus rules Aquarius. So when it's squaring, it is, very Uranian and very outside of the box thinking. So that's exciting as long as we stay in our critical thinking, stay in our trust and our calmness, because when we're in fight or flight or stress, we're not thinking clearly. We might jump on, certain bandwagons that aren't serving, again, the human family. Okay, so the time period that Jupiter is in Aquarius is, so it is cruising right on through Aquarius until May 13th when it goes retrograde. Once it goes retrograde, it will move back into, it will move into Pisces. And, as it does this, let me try that again. It moves into Pisces on May 13th. Then it will retrograde back into Aquarius. And the retrograde period is May 13th to October 18th. This is a time where we create that internal expansion around how we want to participate in the human family. The time periods where it's cruising through, things might move forward in a way where we feel like we can't catch up, or like things are moving super fast. There are a lot of time shifts and strange things happening around time in 2021. But fear not, because you will have time to digest, you will have time to integrate, and this will happen around May 13th to October 18th. And from the time period of July 28th is when Jupiter moves back retrograde into Aquarius and will stay there until December 28th. So that's really going to be hitting up those last degrees of Aquarius more so than the early degrees. It's really moving fast through the early degrees, and thank goodness, because that's where we're having that square to Uranus, that conjunction with Saturn. We can't stay in that energy too long, and this is what I'm talking about with the timeline shifts and all those things, those aha moments, those sudden awakenings. We need time to digest that, so it's moving quickly through those early degrees, and then it's going to take more time in those end degrees, and the end degrees of any sign allow us Mastery. And so the mastery of Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius, is now think of what Aquarius is. Aquarius is, it rules the mist, the air, but the air that's got that emotional intelligence. The many Aquariuses are empaths. They don't necessarily feel at home on planet Earth. They feel like they're from maybe another star system. They have this star energy, and we're going to be talking about this if you're in my solar powered program. We're going to be talking about all about the star energy this month. If you're interested in that, or you're interested in my 2021 deep dive masterclass, that's on January 13th. Click the link in my profile to get in that. It comes with a digital download of the 2021 planner, 2021 planetary planner, which is an awesome thing to have for this year. But the star energy is so vital for us to tap into. It's like what we have forgotten about who we truly are and what we came here to do. And that remembering process happens in those last 10 degrees of Aquarius, so that when we get into Pisces, we are ready to transmute and clear and be in the energy of all one. So it's a very exciting time. It's a very exciting year. And so now that I've gone over that, if you have your chart, or you want to pause this if you're watching the playback and go get your chart, I'm going to talk about, and I'll pull a card for each of the houses for your Jupiter moving through your Aquarius house. So wherever your Aquarius house is. Now, like I said, it might straddle depending on what house system you pay attention to. I definitely am in the house system where it could straddle two different houses. It could be on the cusp of your 5th and 6th. It could be on the cusp of your 6th and 7th. So it could do that. And so you're going to want to look at where this is, and if it straddles two houses, then you're going to look at the early degrees, which it's cruising through, where you're going to have massive breakthroughs. But then in the later degrees is where you're going to have time to digest and really move the energy forward. Okay, so let's talk about the first house. If your rising is Aquarius, this is a massive year for how you're allowing the world to see you and how you're being perceived by others, especially when it comes to your physical appearance and how you present yourself. So this year is a bit, turning inward and getting aligned with how you want to come across, who you're ready to show up as, so that when you're called upon this year, because you're going to be, that you are ready and in alignment with who you truly are, and not being afraid of appearing not normal or too outside the box. Like, this is a year for you to turn inward and really be okay with who you truly are. So it's really important for you to surround yourself with the energy of acceptance and love, and working with people that are going to help you with that, or just being around people that can assist you with that. Likewise, it might be a year where you want to get a pet because they might amplify that self-acceptance. I might say that for like every house though. Okay, if you have Jupiter in the second house, this is exciting. This year is about ripeness, coming into some ripeness around, if you've invested in Bitcoin, Like, I think there's actually like gonna be this in January, some crazy things around that. But then the end of the year, I feel like there's gonna be good things. But second house is your personal finances and resources. So I say, like, look at your investments. It's the right time to invest. It's the right time to invest in yourself, also in your self growth, your boundaries, where you have felt like where you take care of others more than you should be taking care of yourself. This is the year to turn it back on the self and look at where you want to create that ripeness and that I definitely around your money in particular, your own personal structuring of that. And so really leaving behind any doubts or fears you have around any kind of growth in your expansion around money and personal boundaries around that. I dropped my card for the third house. Okay. I don't like that card, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but I'm going to pull a different card for the third house. So the third house, if you have Aquarius in your third house, this year you're going to be having Jupiter move through there, creating expansion and growth around your communication, your ability to express yourself. It might even be learning new topics or teaching something new or writing something new. And it's important for you to seek silence. And this goes along with this card, which I accidentally pulled, but I do feel like it has a part in this, which is projections. So it's really important for you to not take on the narrative that other people in your life have given you around your ability to express yourself, your ability to learn new things, your ability to write, speak, process, communicate. This is the year of the fifth chakra, the throat chakra expression. This is the number 5 in numerology, 2021. And so your expression is so important. And sometimes that requires silence. Sometimes that requires quieting the inner mind, the monkey brain, and really getting clear on what you want to express, where you've taken on the projections of others, and releasing all that so that you can share with freedom and with an understanding of what you really have there to share. That's an exciting year. If you have third house, that's exciting. Okay, if you have Jupiter moving through your fourth house, I keep like Uranus is like because it's like sudden shifts and changes as well. So to all of these houses, like wherever it's moving through, it's just going to be like boom, and then you have to take time to expand into what is being asked of you. Oh, friendliness. If you have Uranus in your fourth house, it's finally being okay with your home, your foundation, healing around your childhood, around, making friends with yourself, making friends with people in your life from your childhood, maybe that you feel like did you wrong or didn't serve you in the way that you needed when you were a kid or when you were younger. And I'm getting the chills. And just finding that forgiveness within your heart so that you can make friends with yourself. One thing that has been coming up for me that I have a hard time sometimes saying things without them coming across the wrong way, so I hope this doesn't land wrong, but one of the things I've been talking about is if you have a lot of places where you have anger or you can't forgive someone for something, it's very likely that when you get to the very bottom of that, there's places where you haven't been able to forgive yourself for either being in that relationship, loving that person, or not loving yourself enough, or, obviously if you're a kid, you can't make those choices, but that whole self-love of self-hate around loving the person that caused you harm, it's a really big year to get down in there and create friends with yourself again, and understand that we all have wanted to survive, and that's how we're here. And sometimes by that desire to survive, we shut off places in ourselves that need our healing and need our love. So this would be a good placement for working with me. If you're interested in working with me, you can click the link in my profile to set up a free call. But also just making friends with yourself in whatever way that looks like. Okay, fifth house. Woo! Skip that one for now. So if you have Jupiter moving through your fifth house, it is time for you to take that trust leap. leap into your life, leap into your creativity. Fifth house is also romance, creativity, creation energy. Creation energy is anything. You can create anything. You can create a relationship. You can create with your kids. This is also the house of children. You could create a child. It's really about that creation energy. And one of the things about that creation energy is you have to be willing to sit in the darkness of the unknown of what exactly you're going to be creating. When you take the literal example of getting pregnant, how many of us I've had 3 pregnancies and nightmares about like the baby actually being a dinosaur, or like you don't know what you're growing. You're like, I don't know what this is. Like, is it going to have 3 arms, or, is it going to have the right things? And that's the thing about creativity and creation energy, is that you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know if it's going to be the right things, but it's your creation, whatever it is, right? And so I really want to teach a class on creativity, but that's another time. But one of the things about trust is, if we're feeling a lot of, if we're feeling a lot of guilt, if we're feeling a lot of shame around what we're creating, or not trusting and being in that energy of the lower vibration around creation, which is fear, guilt, shame, those things are going to keep us from our excellence. They're going to keep us from our true creativity and our true ability to create. So this is a year about shedding that and creating sudden ahas and shifts and expansion around your trust and how much you can trust the process and just keep going and drop in. So that's exciting. Okay, if you have Jupiter moving through your 6th house, la la la, if you have Jupiter moving through your 6th house, hi, good. Okay, so 6th house, this is a year of celebration. This is expansion around your rituals, your self-care, your service to yourself in ways that help you get into the celebration and the freedom of life, and not the restriction and the service to the point where you're suffering. That can be the 6th house energy. And when you have Aquarius here, it's so important to break free of the mind, which was the other card, to break free of the machine. And I have this placement, and I have my South Node in Aquarius. So I know a lot about this, because there is a lot of beliefs, programs running about not being a lone wolf, about just doing what everybody else is doing and just keep working and keep serving and keep the cogs. No, don't be a cog in the machine. How many jobs I had when I was younger where I was told that I was a bad apple and that I influenced people too much to not like their job. And it was true. And this is Aquarius in the 6th house. And so really making peace this year with your inner celebration for your daily life, whatever that looks like. Your daily rituals, your self-care. The 6th house is also our health and our body, and really prioritizing that to the point where your mind is not controlling your day-to-day experience. Your busy mind and like feeling like you need to know what everybody else is doing or how to serve everyone else. That is not the priority. The priority in your daily life is celebration and expanding into your daily celebration. If you have this placement, you have typically, depending on what's happening with the whole chart, you have Leo 12th house, which is about that deepest spiritual celebration. So it makes sense that that is a focus and priority this year. Make sure that you're tending to your health in a way that's celebratory and not kind of like this picture. If you look at this picture, not like, I have to do this, really making it fun, really being in the energy of how do you want to feel in your body and your mind, right? Okay, and then making the shifts and changes that you need to align with that. Okay, if you have Aquarius in your 7th house, and this year you're expanding in your 7th house, that's super exciting. 7th house is the house of partnership. It's the house of balance and the other. And this year is about rebirth in that area. This can be new opportunities in relationships. And, if you look at this card, it's interesting because it's like there are other beings. This is like, this idea of co-creation energy and rebirth in terms of your trust of another, in terms of your ability to really open your heart, and because the lion's there, and be in your newness of a new relationship or a new way of being in partnership. This could be business partnerships. This could be just how you're, it could be relationship to yourself, honestly. But with Aquarius here, it's like, you know, it has to do with your own personal way, your lone wolf way of interacting with the collective. And so the rebirth has to come from a place of trusting yourself and trusting that your expansion into this rebirth is going to be the best thing possible, and really letting the old self die, letting the old ways of, because Aquarius can, because they have such a busy mind, and that's interesting about the last card was for the last house was the mind. They have such a busy mind and they can see so much, but it doesn't mean that everything that they see is reality. And one of the things about the rebirth card is that it's kind of an opportunity to lay to rest a lot of those old beliefs and come into this new way of seeing things and releasing some of that kind of stubborn, Aquarius energy, because it is one of the fixed signs, can be very stubborn. So releasing that to a certain degree so that you can start new partnerships in new, fresh ways. Okay, 8th house. If you, well, I don't know. You have Jupiter moving through your 8th house as a transit, and 8th house Aquarius. Ooh. Possibilities. And I love this card because it has the eagle in it, which is about freedom and possibilities. And the eagle is the highest, or one of the higher aspects of Scorpio, which, you know, for a lot of us, Scorpio is a, you know, astrologer. Some people believe that Scorpio rules the 8th house. I am in alignment with that. So since you see the eagle there and it's in the 8th house, this really has to do with going into the deepest parts of yourself. Pluto's also the ruler of Scorpio, which has to do with going deep within, really healing, reactivating parts of ourselves to see higher perspectives and possibilities. So it's a year of healing. It's a year of possibilities. It's a year of possibly new resources coming in, and especially having to do with groups or others, you know, investments that you make with others, or it could even be, what's that called? I don't even know what it's called because I've never gotten one. What's that called when someone dies? And, oh my gosh, the rebirth card just fell out. Okay, no, that's conditioning. Okay, releasing conditioning too. But there's, you know, like inheritance. So when someone passes, unfortunately, or maybe they've lived a full, long life and we don't need to be sad about it, you know, maybe we can celebrate their life. But sometimes there's money, and sometimes you get that money. And so you could get an inheritance this year. However, be aware that since this card fell out right when I pulled it and it's about conditioning, make sure that the inheritance or the money from others, if you do get money from others or experiences from others or opportunities from others, it could even be like, oh, I have this house and I'm not going to be there. Do you want to just live at the house for a year? Be aware of conditions around this giving, or people offering a helping hand or offering you something. If you have this placement, you just need to use your discernment and, you know, ask good questions before you accept the money, the resources, the thing, okay? 9th house, if you have Aquarius in your 9th house, this year is going beyond illusion. And the 9th house is Sagittarius's house, which has to do with expansion, travel, seeing new perspectives. And so moving beyond your own illusions and this freedom that comes from it is super exciting. You could graduate into teaching something new. You could just finally accept your calling to be a mentor or a guide. And this is a really important time to be aware of what illusions you've created for yourself around your capabilities in this area, or, you know, how much you can charge or how much you can really be in this energy, and really taking ownership of what past beliefs you've had and how to shed those. So a lot of these have to do with our beliefs, right? Which is, of course, going to be the case with Jupiter and Aquarius, because Aquarius rules the mind. Hi, if you're just joining me, I'm talking about Jupiter in Aquarius, and we are now on the 10th house. So if you have Aquarius in your 10th house, this year is expanding in your work and personal authority and public domain. Oh, and it's the Lover's card. And so the way I'm seeing this is that there's ways in which this year you're being able to expand into loving your work in the world, loving your vocation, loving what you do, really getting into more sacredness about your work and more intentionality and more cultivation of what you really want to share, what you really want to appear to the world as. If you have this placement, you have likely, unless it's like a cusper thing, but if you have this placement, you likely have an Aquarius midheaven. And so an Aquarius midheaven is someone that is here to share and is here to share information, insights, ideas with the world that are outside of the box. And so it's really important that you are okay with creating from nothingness, being that lone wolf, being in your own energy enough to not care if what you have to share doesn't align with the collective. Because guess what? We cannot, this is Albert Einstein, we cannot solve problems from the same consciousness that the problems were created. So when we're trying to fight against something, likely we're going into the same energy that created the problem, right? So you might want to this year expand into the nothingness. And I talked about this. You might want to go back and listen to the 5th house because we talked about that, like being okay with that. Some people call it the dark magic. Don't take that literally, but like the magic of being in the nothingness, of being in the dark. Like you literally can't see what you're creating. You can't see how this is going to affect people. You just do it because you love it. The Lover's card. You do it because it feels aligned, because it feels like it's coming from a place of your divine knowing. And ultimately, we need you. We need you. If you have Aquarius midheaven, we need you. Calling all Aquarius midheavens. Please step onto the picture here. We need you. I don't like that card. I'm not going to use that. Okay, so now we're moving to the 11th house, which is the natural placement for Aquarius. So if you have Aquarius in the 11th house, this year is about expanding into, okay, I'll use it, into new vision, which, of course, I'm going to pull one more card because I want more. But 11th house is groups, future, visions, which is like new vision. So I'm like, well, duh. So I'll pull another card. But it's also that capability to inspire the group, inspire the collective. If you have this placement, you are naturally someone who people are drawn to as like the rebel energy or the revolutionary energy. And with that comes responsibility. And so with that new vision comes responsibility. Are you tuning into highest good? Are you tuning into your own selfish desires? With Aquarius 11th house and Jupiter expanding on that, all of those things that I said might be excess with Jupiter in Aquarius that we have to be aware of like not jumping on bandwagons that aren't serving the highest good or the higher collective for the future. We have to really be in alignment with that, especially it comes with a certain responsibility when you have when you have Aquarius 11th house, because you naturally are someone people are drawn to for that. So it comes with a responsibility, and being in alignment with that responsibility is going to be so helpful and so fruitful for who, if you have this placement. Okay, one more card. I just want to, something happened here. Yeah, okay, well, I guess since it came up twice. So also being aware of comparison energy with this placement. So because you're expanding in your groups and your forward thinking, you also need to stay away from comparison energy or looking at other people's lives or looking at what other people are doing, basically, and comparing your own life. Like if you have Aquarius 11th house, you're not here to do what other people are doing. You're not here to be normal. You're here to inspire, and you're here to help formulate the future. Oh, and you're here to love who you are and love what you have to share. But in influencing other people, like this is definitely like a natural placement for an influencer. And with this placement, you just have to be aware of how you're influencing people. Yeah, like do you want to influence people for your own ego? Do you want to influence people for your own benefit, or do you really want to just inspire people and be a part of the collective evolution? And if that's the case, then it's really loving the journey, really loving and not comparing yourself to other people's journeys. 12th house. Oh, I already pulled that card. If you have Aquarius in your 12th house, Jupiter is going to be here expanding on your moment-to-moment experience. So this is definitely like sudden ahas. I like how it matches my shirt. Sudden ahas, shifts, awakenings to how you haven't been present maybe in your life, how you haven't been allowing for God's source spirit to move through your moment-to-moment life, gratitude, being aware of possibilities that come from being in the present, that come from being so present with yourself, that sense. If that's the Lover's card again, I'm just gonna be so hey, okay. Be aware of possibilities. There's a lot of possibilities. Expanding on the possibilities this year, trusting your moment-to-moment experience. This is an energy of, like I said, with Aquarius, new ideas and new visions. And with the 12th house, that is a connection to source, to God, to spirit. Pay attention to your dreams. Pay attention to your sudden ahas. And lastly, because I feel like there's something else, get into the energy. And this is so present. This is like, what could be more present than this? Be in the energy of being so aligned with your moment that it doesn't matter what's coming next. It doesn't matter, because he's so in the moment. He's so enjoying that moment that any moments before or after don't matter. So you kind of have to be in that full energy, because, if you've ever experienced like kind of downloads from source, they sometimes don't make sense. Or they sometimes in the moment you're like, okay. And so maybe you write it down, or maybe you kind of sit with it. But, months later, like I've gone back and listened to some of my things or looked at what I've written, and I'm like, whoa, like now I can digest that and move that forward. But at the time it might seem crazy making or like a fool or, these things, but oftentimes the new ideas do seem like that. And it takes time to digest and integrate and expand into them. So this is a year, if you have this in your 12th house, where that's just going to be happening to your soul, spirit, unconscious, mind, body awareness. Okay. So if you want to work with me, this is the ideal to set up your chart reading. I have openings in February, and then moving into March, I'm going to move into more teaching. I'm deciding, and if you have insight on this, let me know. I'm deciding of whether I'm going to do a live astrology school, because I have my ongoing course that I have for astrology school. So I'm trying to decide if I'm going to do live astrology school or archetypes and astrology for feminine leadership. I'm leaning a little bit more towards the feminine leadership, because I feel like this year is going to be huge for that. But if you want to message me, if you have desires either way, let me know. And if you want to work with me, click the link in my profile. I will be teaching a live course January 13th on the whole year, and going over the astroenergetics of alignment to move your life forward in a way that's with your own creation in mind, with your own power in mind, and with your own ruler of your life in mind, because ultimately that's what it's about, guys. Thank you for joining me. Have a beautiful day. Take care.